DJ said, is block 3. It's a pieced in the hoop block. It was created for you by Rita Gazard, and it's presented by myself, Mark Garetz, and I am a National Floriani educator. And as I always like to do for these webinars, I like to show you what the finished block is going to look like, so that as we go through all the steps, and we're going to be going through the software steps as well as the block construction and sewing steps, that you have an idea where we're headed. So as we go through the steps, it'll make a little bit more sense. So this is the block, and you can see it's a traditionally pieced looking block, except we've done it all in the hoop, and the quilting stitches all done in the hoop, and the embroidery embellishment in the center there all done in the hoop. So it all comes out nice and precise. So if you got a good idea what this is going to look like, I'll go ahead and get out of the presentation, and we'll start up my decorative quilter. When you start it up, if your screen looks like this, where it's all gray, you got to come up to this icon up here in the upper left corner. That's your new page icon. So if you've got a grid and this is white, you don't need to do anything, but if you don't, go ahead and click the new page icon, and you will get a page that looks like this. And the very first thing we're going to do is we're going to make sure that our workspaces are all set up identically. And to do that, I want you to right-click on the top ruler. So bring your cursor up over the ruler and right-click. And by the way, tonight if I say click, that means a left click. If I say right-click, that means a right click. So you're going to right-click on the ruler, and you'll see a little pop-up menu here. First of all, you should be in inches. If you're in metric, switch to inches. You should have Show Grid turned on, and you should have Snap to Grid turned on, and this may or may not be turned on. If it's off, just simply click it, and this little menu will go away when you do that. So then just right-click on the toolbar, or excuse me, on the ruler to get that to show up again. And then lastly, we're going to come down here to Grid Settings. And what we're going to do is we're going to double-check that our grid spacing is set to 0.25 inches, so 1/4 of an inch. You want to make sure that both the horizontal and the vertical are set to 0.25 inches. And we're going to change our grid major lines this time. We haven't done that before in any of our webinars. The grid major lines are these darker purple lines that are running through at various intervals of the minor lines, which are the dashed lines. And your default is 10, but we're going to change it to 7. So mine's already set to 7, but go ahead and switch yours to 7 by backspacing over the 10 or whatever numbers there, and put 7 in both areas, both horizontally and vertically, and then go ahead and click OK. And your screen should look like this. Now, we need a little bit more room to work, so we want to zoom out a little bit. Now, we're going to do that with our zoom control, our numeric zoom control, which is right up here in the center. And you'll click the drop down, and you're going to choose 75%. So 1 notch down from 100%. And when you do that, the screen is going to show you more of the real estate, so things will get smaller, but we'll be able to fit the whole block in. So now we're going to go ahead and create our block. Remember, we have Snap to Grid turned on for this. To do our block, we are going to use our rectangle tool, and it's right here. You can see I've already got rectangle selected, but if you don't, click the little black drop-down arrow, come down and click the rectangle tool. And when you do that, you can see that your cursor is going to change into a little crosshair with a little rectangle by it to remind us that we are in rectangle mode. Now we're going to use this tool to create our square outline of the block. And we've done something like this before, and we're going to start switching it up a bit, but this time we're going to do it this way. There are many, many ways to get your initial block started, and this is just one way to do it. What we're going to do is we're going to get up here into this area, in this quadrant. We want to be at -3 on the top ruler and +3 on the left-hand ruler. And that intersection is right here. Now, you don't have to get right on it because we've got Snap to Grid turned on, and what that means is even if we click, say, over here or over here, it's going to snap to the closest intersection of the grid points, which is right here. So what you're going to do is you're going to click and you're going to drag down to the left, and we're going to stop on +3 here and -3 down here to make a square. And it seems a little difficult, but as you do it, it's not going to be that hard because it's going to snap to the grid points, and you're going to be visually seeing that you're drawing a square. So So I'm going to left click and drag down and to the right, and I'm going to stop at -3 on the bottom and +3 on the top, which is right here. And you can see I'm not exactly on the point, but it's snapping to that grid for me. This is one of the great uses of snap to grid. I'm going to let off the mouse now, and it's going to draw this rectangle, which is an artwork box, which for now is going to be a reference point for us for where we're going to put everything. And eventually we'll also use this to create a basting stitch a little bit later. But for now, it's a reference point for where our stitches are going to go. Now we're going to start putting in some tack down stitches that are actually going to be the seams of our quilt pieces in the block that we're going to stitch and then flip the pieces over and press them into place. And we are going to, before we do those tack down stitches, we need to put a placement stitch on the screen, and that's going to be for our initial square, which is going to be in the center here. And so that you can see these stitches a little bit easier, because we're going to draw along our major grid lines, I'm going to come over and turn on 3D mode. So I'm going to click this 3D icon over here on the left-hand toolbar, and now when I draw stitches, they're going to be a little bolder and easier for you to see on the screen. So to draw our box, we're actually going to draw a stitch starting here and going here, and then here, and then here, and then here. We're going to use a running stitch to do that. So we're going to come up to our top toolbar here and click our Run Stitch icon. This is our creation icon for the Run Stitch. So when we click, we're going to create Run Stitches. So I'm going to just select that icon, and I'm going to come to this intersection right here and click once, left click. I'm going to come to this intersection right here, left click. I'm going to come down here, left click on this corner, go back up to my starting point, and left click, and then I'm going to right click to tell the software that I'm done inputting stitches. So that's kind of a common theme throughout MDQII, is if you want to input things, in general you're left clicking to input and right clicking to tell it that you're done, unless it's like a rectangle or something, in which case it's real obvious that we're done when we let off the mouse. So now we've created our placement lines. Now we're going to come in and create those tack down stitches that are going to become our seam lines that I talked about. We're still going to use our Run Stitch tool, so that should still be selected. We're going to make a seam that comes right along here, and we're going to do it on this 1/4 inch mark right below our top of our box. And we're going to start over here on the left, right lined up with that stitch, and we're going to click there, and we're going to come and click right here on the opposite side. And we're going to right click again to finish. We're going to create a similar stitch along the bottom here, but this time we're going to start down here on the right. So we're going to left click right there, a 1/4 inch up from the box, and we're going to go over to the other side straight across, left click, and then right click to tell it we're done. So now we've got 2 of our tack down stitches in. This is for our smaller rectangles. Now we need to get some stitches in for our larger ones. And we're going to come all the way out to the edge of our block up here, come all the way down to this edge, and we're going to be a 1/4 inch in from this edge as well. But now we're going to start right up here. So I'm going to click up here and create a point. I'm going to come down here and click and create a point. And I am going to right click to tell it I'm done. I'm going to come over here, and I am going to left click. I'm going to come up to the top and left click and right click to tell it I'm done. And now I've created all of my tack down lines that will become the seams when we flip our pieces of the block over. All right, so now what we're going to do is we are going to set this up so that the stitch length of our tack down lines is a little bit tighter than the default. And we're also going to insert some color changes. To do that, the easiest way to do that is to access those stitches in our sequence view over here. Now right now, since it's all been the same color, it's all what we call collapsed, we're going to expand it by clicking on this little plus icon right here in front of Floriani Poly 3435 Deep Ocean. So click on that plus icon, and you can see all of the things that we have created. What we're going to do now is we're going to use our Control key to select multiple items in here. And that's one way you can do it. You can hold down Control and click as many items in the sequence view as you want. and they will all be selected. So I'm going to hold down the Control key, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to click on these last 4 run stitches here. And I'm going to come up to the top one, hold down Control and click, and I'm going to continue to hold down Control and click all 4 of them. So I've now got all 4 of them selected, and I am going to come up to my Properties box here, and you can see that the stitch length of all of these is 3 millimeters, which is the default when we input a run stitch. We want a little bit tighter stitch, so we're going to change it to 2.5. So I'm going to click and drag backwards over this to select it all, and I'm simply going to type in 2.5 and click Apply. Remember that anything you do here in the Properties box won't show up over here in the design until you click Apply. So very important to remember to click Apply. Now what we're going to do is we're going to change the color of these stitches so it causes the machine to stop, because we want the machine to stop after each stitch line so we can put down our fabric. And so what we're going to do is we're going to start at the bottom because it's the easiest to select. So I'm just going to come over with my mouse and left click on the bottom run stitch. And it really doesn't matter what color we select because we're not actually going to change the thread. We just want the machine to stop. So you can pick any colors that you want as long as it's not the original color. Any other color down here will work. And I'm just going to start over here on the left in my color palette, and I'm just going to left click on that to assign that color. And I'm going to repeat that for the next 3 upwards in the sequence. So I'm going to move to the next one up, and I don't want to repeat this color again. I could go back and forth between these 2 colors. That would also work because it would stop in between each. But instead, I'm just going to select the next color in line for it. So we have actually 5 colors in here. I'm going to just continue to repeat that. I'm going to get the next one in line. I'm going to do it for the last one and get the last one in line. And there we have now 4 different colors for those sets of stitches, 5 if we count the very first box. So it's going to cause the machine to stop so we can put our fabric down. Now we're going to continue on by adding our decor into the center of the block here. And we're going to do that with our built-in decors here. So I'm going to come up to my decor icon up here, which is on the second row of icons, and I'm simply going to click it. It's going to bring up a menu of decors that are built in. We're going to use this one right here, FQD DDE005. And when you click that, simply click it, it's going to bring it right into the design. Now, it's not in the center, and we want it down here in the center, so we're going to use a shortcut to bring it into the center, and that's this icon right here. It's our center selected objects. What this actually does is it centers them on the screen. It doesn't center them with respect to each other, but in this case, it'll work out fine for us because we drew everything in the center of the screen. So everything's already there in the center. Now if we click this icon, it's going to move our embellishment down here into the center of the screen. Excuse me, not embellishment. This is a decor in the center of the screen. And then the last thing we need to do is we need to resize this to a size that makes sense for this block. So to do that, we're going to come over to our Properties box with this decor still selected. Come over and click on the Transform tab. Make sure that you are in inches mode, and make sure that Maintain Aspect Ratio is checked. What Maintain Aspect Ratio does for us is when we change one of these values, it's automatically going to change the other to keep this design proportional. This design happens to be exactly the same height and width. So we're going to change it to 2.5 inches. So I'm going to backspace over the top one and type in 2.5. You can see how the bottom one changes to match. I'm going to click Apply to lock that change in. And you can see now our decor is resized to something that makes sense for this block. The next thing we're going to do is we are going to add a basting stitch to the outside of our block. And we're going to use this artwork outline that we created earlier to make a basting stitch for us. So to do that, we're going to select it using the sequence view. We're going to scroll up to the very top of the sequence view, and it's this first artwork icon right here, and it's under the Floriani Poly 3435. It should be the first item here, so we're going to select that, and we are going to come now down to our bottom row of icons which is what we use to convert from one stitch type to another. Now, my Decorative Quilter 2 has a unique feature in that when we click here, if we start out with artwork, it actually doesn't convert this artwork to stitches. It actually makes a copy and then pastes the conversion in down at the bottom, which turns out is exactly what we want to do. So we're going to come down here and we are going to click on our run stitch at the bottom, not the run stitch on the top. And you can see over here in my sequence view that it added another color for us, and it has turned it into a run stitch. And it's actually stitching out in the place that we actually want it to stitch out now in terms of the stitch out order in our sequence view. And then the very last thing we need to do is, since this is just simply a basting stitch, we want to change our stitch length so it's easier to pick out. So we're going to come up here to our properties box. This should still be selected. Come up to our properties box, change our stitch length from 3 to 5 millimeters, click apply, and now we've got a nice basting stitch running around our block. The last thing we need to do is we're going to add our embellishment to this, which is going to serve as our quilting stitches. So we're going to bring in some quilting stitches. We're going to use one of the built-in embellishments to do that. Those are up here in the left under the embellishments icon. We're simply going to click that. It's going to give us some options. The folder that first comes up is our birds folder. You're going to click the down arrow next to birds, and we're going to go down to our traditional folder, and we're going to find a embellishment named Traditional 02A, which is this one right here. So when you click on this, it is going to bring it directly into the design. So we're going to go ahead and click that, and you can see it brings the embellishment in. Now that's a little tiny. We'll get to resizing it in just a second. But before we do that, I want to point out over here in the sequence view that when you bring in an embellishment, it brings in two different items. One is the actual stitches, and the other is an artwork outline around the stitches. Now, we don't need the artwork outline around the stitches, so we're actually going to delete it. There are other applications, and you've seen us do this in the past, where we've used that artwork outline. It's very useful, but we're not going to use it this time, so we're just simply going to delete it. Now, we could technically leave it because it won't stitch, but it's just going to be in the way, and it's going to make our quilt block look a little weird, and we're going to have to think in our minds that we're going to ignore it. So instead of doing that, we're just going to delete it from our design. We're going to do that by coming up here to our cut icon, and I'm simply going to press it, and that will delete that stitch. And oops, I messed up. Hold on a second. I've got to click undo. Undo button, once again, is your friend. And I just showed you exactly why it's important, because I had both items selected automatically, and I just deleted both of them. I didn't want to do that. So I'm going to go back and select both items to sort of backspace to where we were. So this is where you'll be. What you want to do first before hitting the cut icon like I did by mistake, you want to click on the top item, which is our artwork. Excuse me. It should be Poly 739 Cleveland. I don't know if that's the actual color of Cleveland or not, but that's the color of the thread. So here you want to select that, and then we can come click our cut icon, and now our quilting stitches, our embellishment stitches will stay intact. Now we need to come in and we need to resize this to where it makes sense for the block. So it should be automatically selected because we deleted the item above it. You want to come up to your Transform tab, and you want to change the width up here. Make sure you're still in Maintain Aspect Ratio mode, and inches is selected. We're going to change it to 6 inches to make it exactly the size of the block. So change one to 6. The other one will automatically change. And go ahead and click Apply. And you can see now that our quilting stitches look a whole lot better. So we're almost done. The only thing we need to do now is add a little finishing touch to this so that it'll stitch out correctly, and we need to save the file. So one of the problems when working in inches, a 6-inch quilt block really doesn't fit in the 150 millimeter hoop that's commonly known as a 6-inch hoop. 150 millimeters is slightly smaller than 6 inches, so if we left it just like this, it wouldn't actually stitch out correctly in that size hoop. So we're going to resize the whole thing down so it does. So we're going to use the sequence view to select everything, and we're going to scroll up to the top, and at the very top there's an All Items item. So you're going to click that to automatically select everything. There's a couple other ways you could have done it. You could have done a Windows Control-A. You could have gone up to Edit, Select All. But we're showing you a lot of different ways to do the similar things in the software, and this is another cute way to do it, to click on All Items. So now we've got everything selected. We're going to come up to our Transform tab up here in our Properties box, and we're going to use a new cool feature in the software that lets you change what system you're using to measure right here in the Properties box without having to change it in your grid or ruler settings. So we're going to actually check the millimeters radio button here to go into millimeters. And you can see when we do that, our width is now showing us in millimeters along with our height. And you can see it's 152.4, slightly bigger than our 150 millimeter hoop, but enough to cause most machines to say, sorry, you can't stitch this, and then you wouldn't know what to do. So we're going to change this to 150 millimeters. Maintain aspect ratio still checked, so they're both going to change. Oops, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to click on designs there. I meant to come over here and click apply. Sorry you saw those little red-faced angels. That was from a software class we did live at a dealer a few weeks ago. But you can see now we've resized this down to 150 millimeters, and now it's going to stitch out fine. The only thing we need to do now is save the file. So we're going to come up to our save icon and click that. And it's going to choose a directory for us. I happen to be in the June 2015 MDQ projects directory because I've already loaded the project. And you can see that we've given you a file that you could just stitch out if you don't want to go through all the effort. But we hope you'll learn the software by doing that. So you could click here and just name it the same thing. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep it separate because I want to stitch out the one that I just did. So I'm going to backspace over Design 1 and call this My Pieced in the Block, or Pieced in the Hoop, rather. Sorry, Pieced in the Hoop block. And going to save that. So that's going to go ahead and save it in the WAF format, which is our internal format. But in order to get it to stitch out, we're going to have to save it again. And this time we're going to want to save it in our machine format. So to do that, we come up to the File menu and click Save As. And now our name is still there. You're going to click the drop-down box and choose the machine format. So if you had a Viking, you might choose VP3. If you had a Genome, you might choose JEF. If you have a Baby Lock or a Brother, PES. So we'll go ahead and do that and click Save. And that will put the block in that same directory. And now all we need to do is put it on a stick or send it to your machine, however your system is set up, and stitch it out. So that completes the software section of our webinar. And I'm going to go ahead and minimize MDQ. And we're going to bring our PowerPoint back up so we can walk through the assembly instructions. Now you've all seen this page, so I'm just going to go through this. There again, what does our final block looks like? And we're just going to do a little overview, a little review of what the whole project is. DJ mentioned this up front, but this is the third of 6 blocks. There's going to be 1 block every month for the next 6 months total, so the next 3 months after this. You're going to stitch out each block 4 times to create a total of 24 blocks. And at the end of the 6 months, those 24 blocks are going to get joined together to create a 40-inch by 25-inch wall hanging. So that'll be our final project. And the materials list that follows right now is going to be the materials and the fabric cutting instructions for this particular block. But to see the entire fabric and materials list, you want to go back to the Block 1 instructions, which has a more complete list of the fabrics and materials. So let's go ahead and take a look at the materials. You're going to need some Floriani quilted soft bamboo cotton blend batting. You're going to need some Floriani nylon no-show mesh stabilizer, and that's going to be the non-fusible. Any color, doesn't matter. We're going to use any Floriani polyester thread for the piecing. However, you want to pick threads for the embroidery and bobbin thread with colors that work well with your fabric choices. And you're going to need some R&K embroidery perfection tape, also affectionately known as the pink tape. And lastly, you're going to need a minimum 6-inch by 6-inch, or that 150 millimeter by 150 millimeter hoop in order to create the project. In terms of the fabric cutting instructions, you're going to need 4 3.5-inch squares for the center. You're going to need 8 2-inch by 3.5-inch strips. Those are our small rectangular pieces. Our larger rectangular pieces, you're going to need 8 2-inch by 6.5-inch strips. And finally, 4 7-inch squares of fabric for the backing fabric. Now, the quantities mentioned here, this makes all 4 blocks. All right? So just a couple more notes before we get ready to embroider. In the following directions, we're going to be referring to the different color changes as they were saved in the design. The color names may appear different on your machine. Some of the color changes, as we've mentioned earlier, are in this design just simply to make the machine stop between the steps. Does not mean you have to change the thread. You can leave the same cut thread in, or you can change it. Now, the embellishment and the quilting stitches, you do want to change the thread colors to be appropriate with your top fabric. And if you have a multi-needle machine, of course, one of the advantages of a multi-needle machine is it zooms straight on to the next color choice. We don't want that for most of the colors in this design, the first 5. So you're going to put in some reserve stop commands to get that machine to stop so we can take the hoop out and lay our fabric down. And how you do that will be dependent on which multi-needle machine you have. So let's go ahead and get started with the embroidery. First thing you do is you want to load that project, the pieced in the hoop design, into your machine. You're going to hoop up a piece of nylon no-show mesh, get it nice and tight in the hoop, and then you're going to secure a 7-inch square piece of batting to that, and you're going to secure it with a couple pieces of the embroidery perfection tape as you see here. Just make sure you keep the embroidery perfection tape well outside the stitch area. And then you're going to go ahead and attach the hoop to your machine and stitch out the first color choice to create the placement lines for our initial square of fabric. So it's going to be looking like this once it's stitched out. You're going to take the hoop out of the machine and place a 3.5-inch square piece of fabric. You want the right side up, and you want to place it so it aligns with the stitch lines. Next, what we're going to do is we are going to place one 2.5 by 3.5-inch strip right side down along the top edge of the square of fabric, and then you're going to place the other one along the bottom edge of the fabric, and they'll overlap in the middle there, as you can see. You also want to make sure that you leave a little tiny gap along the edges. You can see in the picture here that there's a little tiny bit of that square fabric peeking out from the top and bottom edges of the rectangular pieces of fabric. That's done to ensure we have a correct seam allowance. So you want to make just a little bit sticking out there. And then you want to go ahead and start up the machine, or put it back in the machine and start it up, and stitch out the second and third colors to tack down these 2 strips. And our next step is you're going to take the hoop out of the machine and either finger press or with a small iron press the seams open. So your block is going to start to look like it's shown in the picture here. And then we are going to lay our next 2 pieces of fabric down. So you're going to place a 2 by 6.5-inch strip right side down along the side of the square this time. And you're going to place the other 2 by 6.5-inch strip on the other side. Again, you want to leave that little tiny bit peeking out of the square underneath, and you'll see it like it's in the picture here. And then go ahead and put the hoop back in the machine and stitch out the 5th and 6th colors to stitch the tack down stitches for these strips. Take the hoop out of the machine and press everything open. And now you can see your quilt block is starting to actually take shape and look like a block you pieced by hand. The next thing we're going to do is put the hoop back in the machine and stitch out the next 3 color choices. These stitch out the decor in the center, and this time you want to make sure that you use colors that go with that center piece of fabric and are harmonious with the rest of the fabric overall. And then you want to take the hoop out of the machine, flip it upside down, center a 7-inch square piece of backing fabric right side up on the back side of the hoop, and you want to secure it as tight as you can with some pieces of embroidery perfection tape, as you see here. Again, taking care to make sure that tape is out of the stitch area. Flip the hoop back down and attach it to the machine, And next, we're going to stitch out the next color, and that's going to stitch out the basting line. It's a little hard to see in this picture, but you can see that it's there. That's going to hold everything together, and it's also going to give us a reference point for when we want to trim this block to size. So that's our basting stitch, and then you're going to load the top thread color that you want to use for your quilting stitches. It's a good idea here to use matching thread in the bobbin because it could pull a little bit of the bobbin thread up to the top, and you don't want to see that. So using matching bobbin thread is a fail-safe there. You might want to do that for the decor as well. That's up to you. And then you're going to stitch out that last color, which is going to be our quilting stitches, which will quilt everything together. And lastly, we're going to remove the hoop from the machine. You're going to unhoop the block. Then, using a transparent quilting roller and a rotary cutter, you want to trim a 1/4 inch away from the basting stitch on all 4 sides. And that's going to leave us with a block that will be slightly less than 6.5 inches square. And you want to repeat this whole process 3 more times to make a total of your 4 blocks. And we want to thank everybody for attending. We hope that you will use this video along with the printed PDF instructions to recreate the project at home. We want you to come back next month for the next block in the series, but I have to tell you that if you're watching this live, there will not be a live webinar in July due to scheduling issues between DJ and myself, but we will be producing a video in the next couple of days, and it will go up on the website along with the Block 4 project in the webinar section. So you'll be able to download the video for that project as well. It just won't be live in July. But come on back in August and sign up for the August webinar, and we will be doing August and the rest of them live. And lastly, I want to remind everybody, don't forget to post your blocks on the Floriani Embroidery Facebook page. And as we mentioned earlier, it's important to be on the official Floriani Embroidery Facebook page. Otherwise, you won't get credit for doing your posting. And you want to post your blocks along the way along with your final completed quilt project in order to win a prize. And I want to thank everybody again for attending, and we'll see you in August, and we'll see you virtually in July. You have anything else to add, DJ?
I do, actually. I go and pull some of the images off of the Facebook page. And so I was thinking of showing some of those. I will leave the names off of there and stuff, but
Okay.
I thought I'd show those really quick.
Sounds
some
cool.
Some of the blocks that others have created. So I'm going to go ahead and show my screen here. And can you see it, Mark?
I'm going to click OK. Hold on. Yes, I can see your screen.
Okay, so this is one of them that we have here that is block number 1. So I'm going to show you block 1s first. So this is one that was submitted. Here's another one that was submitted to us. And I love how with this is the faux piecing. I love how it's the same design, but every single one looks different. It's all based off the fabric and thread. So that's what's so neat about faux piecing. You can see they all look a lot different, but they're the same design. And so these are the block 1 submissions. And there's another one right there. It looks totally different than the others. I just love how unique each one is. Here is some samples from block 2, the Trapunto blocks. So you can see some of these showing up here now. And these are all on the Floriani Embroidery Facebook page. So here's another one right here of the Trapunto. And I even have someone who submitted block number 3, which you just went over tonight. So we had some people that got ahead of us.
Wow,
So,
they did it without the video. How exciting.
I know, which is
our
really
printed
good.
Instructions are good.
Yes, and so I just wanted to show those really quick. Keep them coming. We'd love to see what you make with these projects. So, and like I said, we have the little competition going. So please submit them as you get them created. And
Right,
thank you, Mark, for a wonderful job.
I just want to mention that, you know, we're using certain fabric choices in the webinars, but it's real exciting to see how people have mixed it up with the fabrics and really made these look a lot different, like as DJ said, even though they're all the same block. It's really exciting to see that people are really getting creative with the software and their quilt projects.
Yes, I think it's wonderful. I mean, they're all looking so different, and that's what is so great about these projects, is that you know, you can make them your own. So thank you. Thank everyone for attending, and we'll see you again in August. Thanks, Mark, for another great webinar.
All right. Thank you. See you in August.
All righty.